Jesus walked everywhere, from Nazareth to Capernaum, from Capernaum to Jerusalem, from Jerusalem back through the Jordan Valley and up through Samaria and back to Galilee again. Hundreds of miles on foot every year, in sandals, on rocky, unpaved roads, through summer heat that today would stop most people before noon. He did not complain about being tired. He did not stop to rest at every village. He taught for hours, healed people all afternoon, walked through the night when he needed to, and was back on the road the next morning before the dew had lifted. How? Not because he was divine and therefore beyond human fatigue. The Gospels show us a man who got tired, who slept, who got hungry, who asked for water at a well. He was fully human. His body worked the way every human body works. What was different was what he ate, and the one food that appeared on the table of almost every person in first-century Galilee, that ancient travelers carried when they needed to walk for days without stopping, that was pressed into cakes and packed for long journeys and eaten before every road that demanded something from the body, was figs. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly what God put inside this fruit, why ancient people carried it on every long road they ever walked, and why the dried figs sitting in your grocery store right now are one of the most complete and underused energy foods on earth. But first, you need to see the road. Stay with me. Picture the road from Galilee to Jerusalem. It runs south through the Jordan Valley, then climbs steeply through the limestone hills of Judea. The distance is roughly 100 miles. The terrain is hard. Rocky hillside paths, dry riverbed crossings, long exposed stretches with no shade and no water source. In the time of Jesus, this road was walked by thousands of people every year. Pilgrims heading to Jerusalem for the feast, traders carrying goods between regions, families making the journey that every Jewish household tried to make at least once a year for Passover. They did not have energy gels. They did not have protein bars or sports drinks or anything designed to sustain the body through hours of movement on a hot road. What they had was what they carried, and what almost every experienced traveler on that road carried was figs, dried figs, pressed into small dense cakes, wrapped in cloth or stored in a leather pouch, light enough to carry without slowing you down, dense enough to keep the body going for hours on a handful. Your grandmother may not have walked the Galilee Road, but if she grew up in North Africa or the Middle East or the Mediterranean coast, your grandmother knew figs. She dried them in the sun after the harvest. She pressed them into cakes for the winter. She gave them to the children before school and to the men before field work and to anyone who was going somewhere that required something from their body. She did not know about fiber and slow-release sugars and potassium and iron. She just knew that a handful of figs in the morning was different from a handful of anything else. And she was right. The food is figs, dried figs, the first fruit named by species in the entire Bible, one of the 7 sacred foods of the Promised Land, the fruit that a prophet pressed into a paste and applied to a dying king, the fruit that a soldier was given when he had not eaten or drunk for 3 days and was completely restored, and the fruit that Jesus ate on every road he ever walked. Let me show you how deeply figs are woven into Scripture. The fig tree is the first tree named by species in the entire Bible. Genesis chapter 3, verse 7. When Adam and Eve realize they are naked, they sew fig leaves together. Not oak leaves, not olive leaves, fig leaves. The fig tree was the first plant the human hands ever reached for. In Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 8, God describes the promised land by its produce. He lists 7 specific foods. Figs are among them. Not by accident, because in the land God was giving his people, figs would grow abundantly, and the people who ate them every day would have what their bodies needed to live the life he was calling them to. In 1 Samuel chapter 25, verse 18, Abigail prepares provisions to bring to David and his men. She includes 200 cakes of pressed figs specifically. A woman wise enough to prevent a massacre chose figs as part of the provision that would restore an army of men who had been in the wilderness. In 1 Samuel chapter 30, verse 12, an Egyptian soldier is found collapsed in a field. He has had no food for 3 days, no water for 3 days. He is near death. David's men give him water and a cake of figs, and the text says simply his spirit returned to him. 3 days without food or water, a piece of pressed figs, his spirit returned. That is not poetry. That is a description of rapid physical restoration from something very specific in that food, reaching a depleted body and bringing it back. But the most specific medical moment involving figs in all of Scripture is in 2 Kings chapter 20, verse 7. King Hezekiah is dying from a severe infected wound. The palace physicians cannot treat it. The prophet Isaiah is brought in. And Isaiah does not only pray, he gives a precise medical instruction. Take a cake of figs and press it on the wound. They do. And Hezekiah recovers from a condition that had been declared fatal. For centuries, that detail was treated as metaphorical or coincidental. Then researchers analyzed figs and found phycin, an enzyme that breaks down damaged tissue and promotes wound healing. They found compounds with documented antimicrobial properties. They found that fig latex applied to infected skin inhibits bacterial growth in laboratory studies. Isaiah did not guess. He prescribed. And the prescription worked because God had placed inside that fruit exactly what a dying man's wound needed. Now let me show you what God put inside figs that made them the energy food of every long road in the ancient world. Most energy foods work by spiking your blood sugar quickly and then crashing. Your body gets a burst of fuel and then the fuel runs out and you feel worse than before. That is what happens with most modern energy products. The sweetness is fast. The crash is faster. Figs work completely differently. Dried figs contain two types of natural sugar, glucose and fructose, in a specific ratio. The fructose has to be converted by the liver before your body can use it as energy. That conversion takes time. And while it is happening, it creates a steady release of fuel that lasts for hours rather than spiking and dropping. But the sugar is not even the most important part. Dried figs contain more fiber per serving than almost any other fruit available. 5 grams of dietary fiber in a small handful. That fiber wraps around the natural sugars in the fig and slows their digestion even further. The energy does not arrive all at once. It comes in a steady current that the body can draw on for 2 to 3 hours without the level dropping significantly. This is exactly the kind of fuel you need when you are walking 100 miles. Not a burst that fades in 45 minutes. A long, steady current that keeps the legs moving and the mind clear mile after mile. And then there is the iron. 2 dried figs contain roughly 1 milligram of iron. A small handful, the kind you would eat on the road, delivers 2 to 3 milligrams. Iron is what your red blood cells use to carry oxygen to your muscles. When iron is adequate, your muscles work efficiently. They recover faster between efforts. They sustain output without the burning, aching fatigue that iron deficiency produces. For a man walking 100 miles in the heat of a Galilean summer, iron was not a supplement. It was survival. And figs delivered it in every handful. Potassium. Dried figs are one of the most potassium-rich portable foods available. Potassium regulates the fluid balance inside muscle cells. When potassium drops during sustained physical effort, which it does, because you lose it through sweat, muscle cramping follows. Fatigue follows. The body starts working against itself. Ancient travelers on long roads who ate figs were maintaining their potassium without knowing what potassium was. They just knew that the people who ate figs on long roads arrived in better condition than the people who did not. Calcium. Dried figs contain more calcium per serving than almost any other fruit, more than many dairy products by weight. Calcium is what muscle contractions run on. Every step a person takes requires a calcium-triggered muscle contraction. Hours of walking demand a sustained calcium supply. Figs provided it, dried and compact and ready to eat from a leather pouch on a rocky road. And magnesium. Dried figs are rich in magnesium, the mineral that over 300 enzymatic processes in the body depend on, including the processes that produce energy at the cellular level. When magnesium is adequate, the body converts food to energy efficiently. When it runs low, that conversion becomes less efficient. Fatigue arrives earlier. Recovery takes longer. Every handful of dried figs on the road from Galilee to Jerusalem was delivering slow-release fuel, iron for oxygen delivery, potassium for muscle function, calcium for every contraction, and magnesium for cellular energy production simultaneously. Not because anyone had studied nutrition, because God designed it that way. And the people who ate it on every long journey they ever took arrived in better condition than the people who packed something else. So how did figs end up in the back corner of the dried fruit section at the grocery store, next to the prunes and the dates, in a small plastic container that most people walk past without a second thought? The same story every time. Figs require a specific climate and specific knowledge to grow and harvest well. They cannot be scaled industrially the way grain crops can. They do not lend themselves to the kind of mass commercial production that makes a food ubiquitous. Meanwhile, the modern energy industry built a multi-billion-dollar market around processed alternatives. Energy bars made from refined oats and synthetic sweeteners and isolated proteins pressed into a wrapper with a brand name. Sports drinks full of sugar and artificial color. Glucose gels in single-serve pouches. All of them marketed as performance food. All of them delivering a faster sugar spike and a faster crash than the dried figs that carried ancient armies across deserts. The fig never needed rebranding because it never needed improving. God put everything necessary into it in the right proportions. The slow release, the iron, the potassium, the calcium, the magnesium, the whole system. And then a food industry built on speed and convenience and artificial stimulation quietly pushed it to the back of the shelf and sold you something noisier in its place. Your grandmother, who packed figs for every long day, was not being old-fashioned. She was using the most well-tested road food in human history. The same food that ancient pilgrims carried to Jerusalem. The same food that Abigail packed for David's army. The same food that restored a collapsed soldier in 3 days. She was right. She always was. I want to take you into a room in the palace of Jerusalem. The king is lying on a low mat near the window. His skin is pale and damp. The wound on his body has been worsening for days. The physicians who attend the palace have tried everything they know. Nothing has worked. The infection is spreading. The king's name is Hezekiah, and someone has already told him he is going to die. Isaiah enters the room. He does not bring medicine from the palace stores. He does not prescribe the treatments the physicians have already tried. He asks for something simple, something that would have been in any kitchen in Jerusalem that week, a cake of figs. They bring it. Isaiah instructs them to press it directly onto the wound, and Hezekiah recovers, not slowly, not after months of treatment. The text describes a turning point. A wound that was fatal began to heal. A king who had been told to prepare for death prepared instead for 15 more years. The fig paste that Isaiah prescribed contained physin, an enzyme that breaks down dead tissue and allows healthy tissue to form underneath. It contained compounds with antimicrobial properties. It created the conditions for the body to do what bodies are designed to do when given the right materials to work with. Isaiah did not discover this in a laboratory. He reached for what the land had always provided, what every healer in the ancient world knew, what every kitchen in Jerusalem kept pressed into cakes in a clay jar on a shelf. God placed the medicine in the fruit. The prophet knew where to find it, and 3,000 years later, the researchers who analyzed fig compounds found exactly what Isaiah had always known was there. 3 things to take home. The first step, eat them the way the ancient world ate them. Dried figs, not fig jam. Not fig bars with added sugar, not fig-flavored anything. Whole dried figs with nothing added. Look for dried figs where the ingredient list reads one word fig. No sugar, no syrup, no preservatives. Sun-dried or naturally dried. They should be soft but dense, dark and chewy, intensely sweet from their own natural sugars. Eat 3 to 5 in the morning before any physical demand on your body, before a long walk, before a workout, before a day that requires sustained energy. And eat them slowly. Let your body receive what they are delivering in the pace they were designed to deliver it. This is how ancient travelers prepared for the road. Not a large meal that would sit heavy during movement. A small, dense, mineral-rich handful of something that would work slowly and reliably for hours. The second step, combine them the way Scripture did. In 1 Samuel, figs appear alongside raisins in the provisions for David and his men. That combination is not random. Raisins deliver additional iron and natural sugars. Figs deliver the fiber that slows the absorption of both. Together, they create a sustained energy profile that either one alone cannot match as well. Add a small handful of raw walnuts if you have them. The healthy fats in walnuts slow the energy release even further. The omega-3s reduce the inflammation that builds in muscles during sustained physical effort. The ancient road food of the biblical world, figs, raisins, and nuts, turns out to be one of the most nutritionally sophisticated portable energy combinations ever assembled from natural ingredients. The third step, grow a fig tree. The fig tree is the easiest fruit tree most people will ever grow. It requires almost no maintenance once established. It tolerates drought. It grows in almost any well-drained soil. In warm climates, it can be planted directly in the ground and will fruit within 2 to 3 years. In cooler climates, it grows well in a large container and can be moved indoors for winter. Micah chapter 4, verse 4. The prophet's vision of peace and abundance. Everyone shall sit under their own vine and fig tree. In the ancient world, that image was the picture of a life well provided for. Your own food, your own shade, your own medicine growing beside your door. A fig tree beside your door is not a garden project. It is a return to what God designed for the people He was providing for. Plant it once, tend it gently, and in 2 to 3 years, you will have the same fruit that sustained the people of the biblical world through every long road they ever walked. Jesus walked everywhere, hundreds of miles every year on hard, rocky roads in the heat of a Galilean summer. He did not stop early. He did not arrive depleted. He healed people at the end of long days and taught crowds on the morning after long nights and walked roads that would exhaust most people in a few hours. What He ate on those roads was what every person in His world ate on long roads. What Abigail packed for armies and what pilgrims carried to Jerusalem and what soldiers were given when they collapsed and what prophets prescribed when kings were dying. Figs, dried, dense, slow-releasing, full of iron and potassium and calcium and magnesium, delivering a long, even current of real fuel that carried bodies through miles of terrain without failing. The modern world packed that into an energy bar with artificial ingredients and a brand name, and charged you $3 for something that delivers a fraction of what a handful of dried figs delivers for almost nothing. God designed the energy system. He placed it in the first fruit named in the Bible. He listed it among the 7 sacred foods of the Promised Land. He put it in the hands of prophets and kings and travelers and armies and the man who walked more roads in 3 years than most people walk in a lifetime. The figs are still on the shelf. The same fruit, the same system, still working exactly the way it was designed to work. Pick up a handful. Take them on the next long road you walk, and pay attention to how far you get before you feel tired. Drop a comment and tell me which part of this video surprised you most. Was it the Hezekiah story and what was inside the fig paste that Isaiah prescribed? The Egyptian soldier restored after 3 days without food or water? Or the specific combination of slow-release sugars and iron and potassium that made figs the road food of every long journey in the ancient world? I read every comment. Hit like and subscribe. New videos every week. The road is still long. The figs are still waiting. Go take some with you.